It's the Federal Reserve decision day. What should we talk about? Should we talk about long Bitcoin, short the banks, and why that's no longer some maxi catchphrase? Should we talk about what the Fed funds rate's going to be? Should we talk about, here's a headline. Should we talk about this? FOMC preview. What is the bigger risk, a hawkish cut or a dovish cut? Meaning, is the Fed going to cut rates and say no more, or is the Fed going to cut rates and say we'll keep cutting? This is what we're going to be listening to all day, and it's all wrong. I can tell you that right now. Now, why is it all wrong? Well, I am your host, Bill Noble. I will tell you, make sure you subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the like button or leave a comment to let me know what you think about the show. So as we all obsess today of, what the overnight lending rate will be between banks, we will split hairs on Powell's press conference. We will all sit around with bated breath as the algorithms trade whatever goes on the news versus what was expected. Right now, it appears to be there's 100% chance of a rate cut. And everyone in crypto as of 8 o'clock in the morning on the 10th of December is doing the famous crypto sell the fact, right? Bitcoin went from a whopping 87 or 88 to 92. Oh my God, let's get out. Oh, okay. I have a better idea. Let's take a brief moment to discuss the banks. And you ready for this? Silver, right? Now, first, let's do precious metals, right? Gold's going up, silver's going up, government debt's a problem, fiat is a problem, lending between banks is a problem. So what do? Well, you buy gold, you buy silver, right? Okay. That's not really complicated. Gold and silver rising is usually, in my mind, a prelude to a flood of Fed liquidity. And I'm not talking about a change in the overnight lending rate between banks. I'm talking about what Bank of America was talking about a couple days ago, about $45 billion a month coming into the market in the form of QE. QE, as defined as the Fed literally prints money, takes government bonds from banks, and floods the system with this high-powered money, which usually winds up goosing capital markets, including crypto. Now, that sounds good, and I know that everyone is a liquidity expert on Twitter, and I know everyone in crypto needs crypto to go up, so everyone is like, okay, Bill, how do you take silver, the banks, the Fed, and equal that to what I care about, which is number go up? How do you get number go up? Well, there's actually a path. Now, specifically, you've heard people talk about 150K Bitcoin. I work with an analyst that's talking about, well, you'll have to tune into the YouTube member podcast today or tomorrow after the Fed to find out. But needless to say, we're talking about, higher prices sooner than you would expect. Now, let's break it down. So let's say silver is at 60. Okay? And if silver goes to, say, 100, what would that mean? Well, it's already happening in terms of physical delivery of silver is grinding to a halt. There's someone in Asia that wants to take delivery of silver, and dealers are offering them exorbitant amounts of cash just to take money instead of the physical silver. And they're like, no, I want my silver. Total silver demand is off the charts because of AI data center construction. And you also have issues where, vaults are essentially empty. They're empty, right? COMEX December deliveries are already 52 million ounces with vaults at multi-year lows, right? And if you look in the silver derivatives market, which is very important, you could see people making huge bets and trying to protect themselves or hedge from a huge rally in silver. Now, undoubtedly, if you're still with me, I appreciate it. What does this have to do with crypto? First, let's talk about what it has to do with the banks. Now, name the biggest banks in the world. Name the banks that are short silver. The suppressors of silver. Notice everyone's like, oh, crypto's manipulated. They're suppressing crypto. Believe it or not, they actually do suppress precious metals. Literally. By short selling, and doing things in the derivatives market, positions that they could never cover. To be honest, they could never cover. There's so much fake paper silver out there, and a lot of it's sold short, that if there ever really was a gigantic squeeze, banks would lose a huge amount of money. What banks? Oh, teeny weeny banks like JP Morgan, like Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, HSBC, Bank of America, UBS. These are some of the biggest banks in the whole world. Now, let's say silver starts squeezing higher. What happens to these banks? What happens to their silver positions, their derivatives exposure? And then combine that with what's going on with credit card delinquencies and commercial real estate. Kind of like wrap it all together in a big old, Big Short bundle. Like Michael Burry's got it all wrong. The Big Short may be JP Morgan, which, by the way, kind of crashed yesterday. Did a little mini crash, kind of fell out of bed, with the rest of the banking sector actually doing okay. Ding, 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 ding. So what happens if you have a banking system that wakes up one morning, silver's at $90, and they've got $25 billion in mark-to-market losses? This is a lot of money when you're talking about bank P&L. Okay, if silver's at $105, which is where one guy thinks it's going to be by March, you're talking $40 to $50 billion worth of losses in banks. Again, that's just silver. We're not talking about commercial real estate or credit cards. And of course, if you have silver at something insane like $120, you have $100 billion in P&L destruction inside major banks. At a moment, by the way, where, because everything is go out there, bank reserves against losses are at an all-time low. So insane exposure at an all-time high. The cushion to protect in case it goes wrong at an all-time low. With a monster commodity squeeze that everyone is short in the banking sector about to happen, right? I mean, silver's at 60. It doesn't downtick. It's kind of moving on its own. Gold is flat. I mean, it's still at 4K, but it's flat. It's not like silver's following gold. Silver has become a monster unto itself. Now, I'm sure hearing about this distress in the banks, or what could happen if silver takes off, that if that happened, right, if you had something like $100 billion in losses all of a sudden in the banking system, you could have to have a full QE restart. That's like $85 billion a month or more. Even if you have isolated bank problems, you could have to have the Fed put in $300 to $500 billion into the system. That's where these guys are getting this $45 billion a month from. So can you imagine bringing this full circle? So you don't have a problem with the banks. You have a problem with the biggest banks, right? Jamie's always complaining, he wants interest rates at 8%. Yeah, because he's short silver. Higher interest rates keep silver down, keep precious metals down. Jamie hates Bitcoin. Why? Well, because his bank could be the reason why Bitcoin gets loose, and that could be a feedback loop. Everybody goes, oh my God, there's something wrong with JP Morgan, buy Bitcoin. They actually have an outlet. The market has an outlet for any kind of problem with him. Now, no one's talking about this, and you probably think I'm crazy, but part of what the value proposition of this show, the value proposition of Patreon, where we're talking about Zcash, energy, and Bitcoin mining stocks, because they fell out of bed and that's too cheap. And the reason we're talking about that in the YouTube member area, other than the fact that Toby thought it was a good idea, but we wrote our fancy research reports with our GAN model, is that what happens if any part of this comes to pass? What happens if Powell acknowledges risks in the banking system today, right, as a part of the statement? That would be considered dovish. Powell makes any kind of statements of being cognizant of risks, any risks. Now, if he talks about that, we know we're talking about people defaulting on loans, but we could also be talking about this silver monster, which lurks because it affects the biggest banks. If you ever had the Fed have to come in and rescue the likes of a JP Morgan or a Bank of America because of a derivative snafu, that's how you get Bitcoin at fill in the blank. I mean, all these clowns talking about Bitcoin below the 55-week moving average at 105, you got to be kidding me. No one's going to care about 105 if you have the Fed having to do QE to save JP Morgan. Think about it. So, I mean, what are we going to hear about today? Well, we're going to hear sell the fact. We're going to hear, oh my God, he cut rates, or oh my God, he didn't. Okay. I think if he doesn't, he's inviting, I don't know, something much more awful, much more awful. But, you know, it's, you never know with government officials, right? Personally, I think if he does cut rates today, he's doing so not because he wants to, but because he has to, right? I mean, they just cannot let this get out of control, because silver, being a commodity market, can get out of control all on its own. And they best do whatever they have to do to keep this market, or at least that part of the market, calm. Because I'm telling you right now, I mean, I could see it already. Like, first Zcash was vertical, right? Then now Monero's up 5% today, taking out 409. These are the sort of end of days hedges, right? Problem with the banks, issues, Fed having to come in and do QE. What do you want to own? Well, there's a reason why Bitcoin just can't go down, right? It used to be sitting here like this was negative. Now I think sitting here like this is positive, because you have Vanguard, normies, you know, tweets going out today about cable news covering the state of Texas buying Bitcoin for its own account. Normies are out there, right? There's a bid underneath Bitcoin. It's a structural bid. That means it's Vanguard. It's, you know, it's major players underneath there. It's not going lower. And then any other form of money isn't going lower either. And I would imagine that's going to include Ethereum, because, I mean, I did a show yesterday with Crypto Princess, right? And a guy named FOMC. This guy shows me that if you look at Bitcoin dominance, okay, you look at Bitcoin dominance without stablecoins. So like the percentage of market cap that Bitcoin takes up, you know, it's like it's 65%. Bitcoin is 65% of the crypto market. Now, yeah, I mean, there's a reason for that. I understand that. And Bitcoin could go massively, massively, massively higher. But if Bitcoin goes massively higher, it's going to have company. It's going to have company, right? You know, if Bitcoin is the gold, somewhere in here is silver. Now, I would vote for Zcash. I think it could also be Ethereum, because I think these stock market people are going to look at what's going on with JP Morgan stock, or look at what's going on with silver, and they're eventually going to put two and two together. That if you don't get outside the banking system and you don't get Bitcoin below 100, once Bitcoin gets back above 105, the next real supply in Bitcoin, I think, will be at 130. Because you're going to rip right through that whole congestion zone around 120, because all the Bitcoin miners that had to do what they had to do in terms of selling, yeah, they're all done. Long-term holders took profits for a couple different reasons. You know, we can talk about the reasons the miners sold, but it's perfectly natural and organic what they did. These long-term whales, if there are any, that bought into this 4-year cycle thing, that's wrong. Now, I can understand if you've made billions and you want to cash out and be done, that's okay. But that selling pressure isn't there anymore. It isn't there. And everybody just got done over the last 6 weeks dumping Bitcoin, dumping crypto, telling you that it was over. I mean, Bitcoin went from 127 on October 5th to 80 at Thanksgiving. So in a month and a half, Bitcoin went straight down. And I don't see why in a month and a half, Bitcoin can't go straight back up again, because this silver thing's not going away. Problems with the banks are not going away. And this idea that crypto is eventually going to do this huge catch-up trade to precious metals, because the Fed is going to have to print money into the system, push money into the system to save our bond market, most likely the Japanese bond market, right? In other words, there are so many things that could get out of control that it's almost a given in my mind that the Fed is coming in with epic amounts of high-powered money. Everybody is using the word liquidity now. That's fine, but I'm tired of listening to that, because I don't think people understand what it means and why the Fed would do it. Like, there could be reasons why people like Bessent or people like, the Orange Man are like so insistent on cuts. Because, I mean, if you think JP Morgan's problems are in a vacuum and no one knows about them, you're crazy. Jamie is probably on the phone with somebody going, hey, literally this silver thing, which I know you think I'm out of my mind. This silver thing is so serious, right? Because silver has an industrial use, right? And it's literally vanishing. Uncle Sugar may have to start coming in and using his silver to stabilize the silver market. Banks or somebody is going to lose a huge amount of money if silver gets out of control. And I think this is going to require intervention in the metals market. And I think it's going to require just good old-fashioned QE, period. And other forms of money will wake up and take off. Now, of course, again, back to today's business, you won't hear about that today. You'll hear Powell said this, Powell said that. The Fed funds rate went up, the Fed funds rate went down. Now, of course, there is going to be a huge disappointment trade, okay, if he does not lower rates today. I'm not stupid. However, if there is some sort of hysterical wick lower off anything that the Fed does today, regardless of whether there's a cut or not a cut, I vote to aggressively get after this market. I mean, aggressively BTFD. All right, because, regardless of, like I said, of whether or not Powell wants to admit it or not, I think going with the expectation today is the calm thing to do. I think if he doesn't cut rates today, it's denial. It's denial. I actually think Bitcoin should go up more if he doesn't do it. Because again, it's the worst kind of denial. Denial about what's happening with banks. Denial about what this precious metals move really means. In other words, the thing that's usually meaningful on the macro side is never the thing anyone's talking about, right? Remember this a week ago? Everybody on Twitter was like a yen bond market, yen carry trade expert. Okay, well, if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. What you should worry about are the things that no one is talking about. And it's simple. Banks could lose a lot of money if silver goes to 100. If silver goes parabolic, Bitcoin and crypto could follow because it brings in the Fed. That's it. End of story. Done. Right? And again, for this market to really hit ignition, you need even the smallest hint of Powell going, yeah, we're watching the risks. Maybe he uses it by talking about the labor market. I don't know. I think there's going to have to be a language pivot that you want to watch out for. And also, of course, don't forget that whatever the market wants to do, like the day of or immediately after, usually is wrong. It's algos off the news. Today, it's probably sell the fact, whatever it is, right? Whatever's on Twitter today and probably later into this evening, all the way into the London Open, is most likely wrong. And then when the algos are done trading what's on the news, the real move can begin. Okay. And I continue to think part of the real move, other than my Zcash obsession, could be Ethereum that winds up leading all the rest of altcoins. Like Ethereum and precious metals, as you've heard from me ad nauseum, are tied together. They are tied together. So why would Ethereum not go up? Let's do it that way. One analyst is pointing to the fact that, a lot of hotshot, fast-moving stocks have recovered and Bitcoin hasn't. I think that's because everyone thinks that Bitcoin needs Powell's permission to move. It's like, oh, well, we have to wait to see what the Fed does. We have to wait to see what the Fed says. Yes and no. No, we do not need the Fed to say, well, let's we're going to cut rates and that's great for Bitcoin. So, let me just take a moment to moon your bags here at the Fed press conference. No, it doesn't work that way. Bitcoin does not need a change in interest rates to move. Bitcoin needs, an injection of hot money, fast money, high-powered money, because the Fed has to save the banking system, period. Right? Because if you start putting together like more than one thing, like, credit card debt, okay, who cares, right? This has been all over the place everywhere. But if you have a silver shock when people are kind of in a mood to move outside the system as it is, right? Like silver at $100 is embarrassing at multiple levels for Uncle Sugar. These things are going to have an impact, because if you really want the thing that embarrasses Uncle Sugar, that would be Bitcoin at 150K. Because if Bitcoin reclaims the 50-week moving average at like 105 or whatever it is, everyone's big like breakdown, it's the cycle's over and all that BS. Right. Bitcoin reclaims 105, you're going to have a Christmas parabolic in crypto. You're going to have a Christmas parabolic in Bitcoin, because everyone's going to go, wow, I think we should get outside the system now. I mean, it's kind of that simple. Steven GF888 says, talk about Zcash more, sir. I would like to. Has anybody noticed that, there's like no downtick in Zcash? Bear markets don't let you out. That's what we've experienced in crypto over the last 6 weeks. And in Zcash, I think we're experiencing bull markets won't let you in, right? The bull market actually let you in Monero over the last like couple of weeks. It's not letting anybody in Zcash. And I submit to you, just straight up, if Bitcoin is gold, Zcash is silver. Zcash is still just inside the top 20. Zcash, in my not so humble opinion, should be top 5. And if we're going to have a parabolic, well, Zcash has already demonstrated that, there's nothing like a Zcash parabolic, because those are like the Bitcoin parabolics of old. They're like the Bitcoin parabolics of old. And, to be honest, I don't understand why no one thinks the larger cryptocurrency market can't trade just like Zcash. I mean, no one in legacy owns Bitcoin, and no one in crypto owns Zcash. People might own XRP. Okay. But if they own XRP, you might see a move in Zcash first, and then XRP might follow. Because again, this whole idea of fast money, right? Like, even if you don't understand the fact that the whole world is short silver and they're running out of it, and that could create a monster squeeze that could create losses for certain people, right? It's the debasement trade. In other words, fiat currencies are falling in value, and the market is looking for anything it can get its hands on to protect itself from falling fiat currency values. That's silver. And amazingly, they're buying that and not crypto. And what happens when crypto all of a sudden does a catch-up trade? Well, in Zcash, you're watching it, right? They dropped Zcash. It retraced 62% of that move, which was Christmas in itself. And now it hits 320, and now it's at 440. And I don't even know why it would go back down below 400. Because if it does, me and the whole rest of the world is going to be down there trying to grab it. So it's like, oh, wow, you guys want to sell the fact today? Awesome. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. Let's go. Sell the fact. Oh, my God. Powell said something at the press conference. Oh, sell. Get out. Hurry before it's too late. The cycle's over. It's over. It's a trap. I'm doing exactly none of that. Believe it or not, Altcoin Daily just reported that United States banks are now officially allowed to buy and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, and cryptocurrency for customers. Just in time for the silver squeeze. Riddle me this. You're a bank and you're sitting around, you're going, okay, well, we're kind of short silver and we're not going to be able to get it back. So what are we going to do? You're going to buy Bitcoin. You're going to buy Bitcoin derivatives. You're going to buy bullish Bitcoin derivatives. You know, it's like, oh, can we protect ourselves in silver? Okay, well, right now you kind of still can. But if it gets to a point where they can't, they're just going to start grabbing Bitcoin. Grab the fastest moving thing that will follow silver. Now, am I silver obsessed today? Maybe. Am I Zcash obsessed every day? Right? Is my partner in the YouTube member area obsessed about Bitcoin miners, where we have a new report in Patreon today? So we have Zcash for our platinum guys, the day-to-day Zcash roadmap. Oh my God. Oh my God. Gradually, then suddenly. You won't believe the upside target. So, I mean, we're talking about these things, and it doesn't look like the market is moving, but it looks like it can. And I think everyone is being lulled to sleep. Everyone's going to read the headlines today. I know. There's no getting around it, right? And I am interested in what he's going to say, but I think the market is telling you what he's really going to need to do, which is why that one bank forecasts $45 billion in QE. And I think he's going to have to do that per month just to prevent a meltdown. Just to prevent the meltdown. I mean, because again, you know, it used to be once upon a time, you know, they used to have to wait for the problem to come in and then do it. They can't do that now. I mean, you're gonna have a meltdown at JP Morgan. You're gonna have a derivatives desk blow up over there, an empty silver vault. No, you're not. They're gonna come in and they're gonna do something. You see them start doing, like, if you see them trying to help the silver market, you know it's a debacle, right? You see them trying to help the silver market. You don't need to understand the silver market. You just know that somebody's got huge losses and there's long Bitcoin short the banks trade to be done. You realize, just talking about, you know, what the stonks people will see. You realize 2 days ago, you could have bought the Bitcoin ETF at a very nice, tidy round number of $50 a unit. Yeah. You go to somebody in equities and go, hey, yeah, Bitcoin's down 30%. You know, JP Morgan stock is crashing. I'm like, oh, this is down 30%. What's it trading at? 50. Oh, 50. Nice even number. Why don't we get long and see if it goes to 100? That's stonks mathematics for you. You don't think that's going to happen? That's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And when it does, everyone's going to go, oh, man, you know, I could have bought it at 90. I could have bought it at 89. I could have bought it at 93. Listen, I want to keep my Patreon and my YouTube members, and I want to keep everybody who listens to this stream out of this. I coulda, I shoulda, I didn't. Now I don't know what to do. Maybe I won't do anything. No. MJ hits. Hal Lopez up at a decent time of the day. YouTube members, welcome. Warmon, Jav, Francisco, Live It. When start? Right now. Bank of England, ECB, all probably involved in the silver pickle themselves. We have Art from the Amsterdam airport, just picked up some BTBT, which showed up in our Patreon report on Bitcoin miners, energy stocks, Bitcoin miners acting as electricity producers. I mean, it is mind-boggling the opportunities that are out there, given how much some of that stuff is down after they purge the excess on the upside. Remember, it's a GAN thing. Whatever propelled like some of these stocks in the AI and Bitcoin space, massively higher, a lot of that stuff is corrected. The energy that drove it up can reassert itself. It can reassert itself. This is the argument in Zcash. You got enough juice to go from 30 to 700. Everyone thinks it's over. I'm like, is it? Does that energy go away? No, I don't think so. Not according to what Gant said. So if you had the energy to have BTBT go up previously, well, that energy's still out there. It's still out there, right? Lumerous, a Spartan Colonel. Good morning. Good morning, Spartans. Crypto Crazy is here hitting that buy emoji button. Okay. Okay. We have Francisco here. ETH pumped, but altcoins stayed flat yesterday. Sentiment is so bearish. And Music Me noted that this came up in our GAN model that Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin and has privacy features. A sleeping giant. You know what, bro? I agree. Let's get it going. Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, Monero, Litecoin, and Dash. Let's go. What goes up? What no one likes, what no one owns, and no one knows how to buy. In this case, they know how to buy it, but people will never be able to lower themselves to get on Coinbase, and everyone is still sleeping on Zcash because everybody thinks that move was over and they missed it. Wrong. XRP fam 420 Odd Dark is in the house. We have YouTube members hitting that buy emoji button. I'm going to do it. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I'm going to do, which is buy more Zcash and Bitcoin if they hit this market. I mean, I have like the Arthur Hayes viewpoint on the world. And I understand what this person is saying, that, altcoin sentiment is absolutely horrendous. Yeah, it's absolutely horrendous until something suddenly shifts. And, like I said, these problems with banks, silver, and all this stuff, yeah, it's been out there, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter until it does. And even if that's not it, everything has recovered except Bitcoin. And you have to ask yourself, are people afraid to get back in? The answer is yes. Of course it's yes, right? Everyone's like, crypto is suppressed. Crypto is manipulated. No, it's not. You are, right? In other words, you've been manipulated to think that crypto is no good based on the price action and based on whatever they're saying on crypto Twitter. The market isn't manipulated. The people who do the buying and selling are manipulated. So you're afraid, you're upset, your bags are wrecked, you don't want to buy, you don't want to do any research, you don't want to do anything because you're depressed. Of course you're depressed. Of course you are. I mean, Bitcoin at 89K, I was like, oh my God. But you know what? The cure for this is just a complete John McAfee style blank you attitude. Do not be bothered by short-term price movements. They want to do what they need to do today off this Fed number. Who cares? Who cares? We know what they're eventually going to have to do, right? So the market is fine. The question is, what's wrong with the people in the market? And this is not just you, by the way. I'm talking to you, but I'm not necessarily talking about you. Yeah, of course you're bummed out, but I mean, hedge funds, like I was on some hedge fund podcast where I was like trying to be a balanced analyst. I mean, deep down inside, I'm always kind of, Toby's turned me into like an absolute wild, never sell crypto maxi. But I mean, there was a guy on that one podcast and he was like, you know what? I know it looks horrible because it did look horrible because it's like at 80 something. He's like, I don't care. The fundamentals have never been better. And Toby says exactly the same thing. Like the case for Bitcoin is there. If there's a crisis next year or some kind of big problem, it actually may benefit crypto. Yeah, you could have volatility if it impacts equities. But as soon as somebody figures out that there's something wrong with the banks and the Fed is coming in like in epic fashion, like Powell's going to leave office in May with the entire system ablaze. Really? Really? You think that, honestly, you think that's going to happen? And even if it did, Bessent sitting on $1 trillion, right? One of these guys will do it or both of these guys will do it. And I think people don't see that there are catalysts out there. There are. And this silver thing could be like the most underrated of them all. Because, like I said, it affects the big banks. And if you see any signs of weakness, any weakness in JP Morgan or any weakness in any of these big bank stocks, it's a prelude to a rocket ship in crypto. Okay. It's like, okay, here's what's funny. So Felix is right. All the YouTube influencers and Twitter economists told us that 2025 would be bullish. And then and now it's Q4. And now 2026, you guys have no idea what will happen. Okay. That's all true. That's all true. Right. We all bought this Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's the golden age. We all bought that. Okay. And then crypto basically, 2024 and 2025 early in January was nothing more than a bear market rally and everything except Bitcoin went down. I'm with you. But with this silver thing, I submit to you this. Can you have a monster catch-up rally at the end of December? Like my partner still has an upside target for now, January, whatever, that seemed crazy when Bitcoin was sub 90. I was like, oh my God, I got to figure out, in my mind, I'm like, I got to figure out like a plan B in case this doesn't work out. And now I'm like, oh, no. Wait a minute. Maybe her upside target isn't high enough. Because what stops, like I said, Fed QE comes in, problem with the banks, and everyone who's going to sell Bitcoin has already sold it. And of course, this includes altcoins. I mean, if you think there's no seller in Bitcoin, there's no seller in altcoins. And you know this because of the way Zcash trades, the way Monero trades, right? All you need is one little catalyst and every single altcoin is up 15, 20%. Okay. Libid says Germany wants their gold back right now out of New York. Are the bars actually available? Bro, we don't know. Actually, man, you better hope so. Because if they have to come in and intervene in the market, here's what the silver market looks like when it breaks. So there's paper silver, like futures contracts and ETFs. That's one market. Then you have the actual silver market for physical delivery. Well, if the market for physical delivery like detaches from whatever's going on in paper silver, like in other words, there are guys who are panicking. They're panicking. They're like, oh my God, I need silver now. I have to take delivery. I almost don't care what I have to pay. And dealers are like, well, can't we give you a whole bunch of money instead? They're like, no. So you could have this detachment. Now, of course, if Uncle Sugar can't save the metals market, I don't know what that means. And again, I don't want to be too crazy, but crypto as a commodity, right? It's gold, silver, commodities. Crypto as a commodity that you buy because there are problems with fiat systems, let's call it that, is something that people are not talking about. They'll say, oh, it's the debasement trade, meaning dollar lower, something else higher. But that's almost like saying liquidity, right? It's just like, oh, it's the debasement trade. Oh, it's liquidity. People are not like reasoning through the words. Debasement happens when you start pushing $45 billion a month into the market. You will also note, just so we get all the macro nerd stuff out of the way, that the U.S. bond market was not trading particularly well. Bonds were selling off in advance of this Fed thing, leading to them to obsess over what he does and then what he says after what he does. They cannot let this go nuclear at Christmas. They cannot. And the bigger the problem, the harder they're coming in sooner rather than later. Because Bessent is looking at this. Powell might be dumb enough to let all this get out of hand, but Bessent isn't. And that's why I'm like, okay, well, you know what? You guys go right ahead and sell Bitcoin today. Right ahead and give me this whole thing about sell the fact. Sell the fact, and I don't know, go put it in a potted plant or something. I'm not doing that. I'm not. Even if they hit this thing and I got to get on the tape tomorrow morning and go, okay, well, market's down 5%. My line is not going to change. Of course, you'll want to tune into the show to find out what changed and what TA is there. And don't forget to get in Patreon because, again, all the details about this silver thing, I will be getting the details in there, about exactly what this could mean, particularly the upside targets for crypto. That's what's mind-boggling, right? If these things that stress the banks, if they ever really got going, what could actually happen in crypto? People's bullish imagination is gone. Now, Alpha Video, Supermat from the UK, Crypto Crazy, DNT Saver, right? Odd Dark, all my friends, all our YouTube members who help support our channel, right? Francis, you know what? I gotta go to remedial YouTube handle pronunciation school. This is not over. Crypto is not over. The cycle is not over. What should be over is everyone's reluctance, depression, anxiety, and hesitation. Because the floodgates are about to open. They know it in stonks. They may even know it in bonds. It's a mystery as to why we don't know it in crypto. The S. Jeski just got up. Sir, welcome. All right, let's sum it up for anybody who's here on TikTok or anybody who just got here. Today is the Fed rate decision. There's supposedly a 100% chance that they cut rates. So assuming they do that, even if Powell comes out and says, I'm grumpy and I don't want to cut rates anymore, even if there's volatility in Bitcoin, I say get after the dip. I say get after it. If you see silver start going past 60, this could be an indication that you could wind up having big losses in the banking system from people being short silver. People could start panicking about the delivery of physical silver, and that situation can get out of hand because it affects the biggest banks and the biggest exchanges. This could create systemic stress, which brings in the Fed. And I don't even think Bitcoin's going to wait because I don't know. Bitcoin isn't being held down. I think it's what I would call a buyer strike. It's not manipulated. It's a buyer strike because you've been psychologically forced out of the market with, oh, booga booga, the cycle's over. Oh my God. Oh my God. All wrong. All wrong. Crypto Serenity says silver is now at 61.50. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, and UBS. You have problems with those banks. You have problems with the world, and central banks cannot let that happen. They will not let that happen. And if Bitcoin reclaims the 55-week moving average, well, to find out the additional details, you're just going to have to jump into Patreon because I'm going to put them in there later today. And we are going to cover it on the YouTube member podcast. And it will blow your mind as to what our GAN models think can happen in this market if this, I don't know, bank problem, silver, credit cards, whatever. When this happens, it's going to happen all at once. Why? Because no one in legacy owns Bitcoin and nobody in crypto has the will to buy. So people are either out because they don't own it or they don't get it, even though they've heard of it, or because they've been wounded and pushed out psychologically. Psychology can change quickly. That is the market update for today. We will see you after the Fed.